There are a lot of patients who, for various reasons, don't necessarily want to smoke their medicine. So today we're going to cover how to make hash brownies or cannabis brownies and how to dose it properly. Calculating your dosage for edibles can be a little bit tricky. Now I've already figured out for this batch of brownies that I'm going to be using 14 grams of bubble hash. And first thing you want to do with your hash after you've weighed it out and determined, you figure out how many brownies or how many cupcakes or how many things you're going to make in your batch, and you weigh out the hash, or you can use cannabis bud, either one, as long as it's completely dry. And then you get a coffee grinder and grind it up into a powder. It pretty much has to be in a powder. So I'm going to pause while I grind this up. Before you can use hash or bud, dried bud, to bake with, you have to do something that's called decarboxylate the cannabis product. The reason for this is that THC in its fresh form, while it's still in the resin glands, is actually an acid. It's called THCA, and it doesn't become an effective agent until it has a carboxyl group that moved, and then that leaves the THC behind. THC is oil soluble. So in order for it to be able to be digested, it has to be dissolved in an oil. And so the ideal way to decarboxylate your cannabis product for baking is to mix the powdered material with an oil that's going to be used in your recipe, and then cook it at approximately 250 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 to 30 minutes, basically until it stops bubbling, and I'll demonstrate that for you in a bit. Alright, let's talk about the best way to do it. Typically, you're going to want to mix your cannabis powder, which we have here, with an oil that you're going to use for your recipe. So this particular brownie recipe calls for half a cup of vegetable oil. I like to add about a quarter cup of, so there's 4 tablespoons or a quarter cup of butter. And I have a quarter cup of olive oil that I'm going to mix with it. And then I'm going to add in cannabis powder. And alright, the decarboxylation process occurs as the temperature gets up around 200. Let's see what we got so far. A batch this size will probably take 20 minutes or so to fully decarboxylate. The boiling that you see is actually the decarboxylation process occurring. As the THCA or the THC acid decarboxylates, the carboxyl compound breaks down into water and carbon dioxide, and that's what you see bubbling off here. And this process is going to take a while, so I'll just keep checking the temperature. Okay, we've crossed 200, we're approaching 210 boiling point. I turn the fan on. And as you can see, it's still bubbling, but pretty mildly, and it's got a ways to go yet, so I'll just let it keep cooking, and the temperature will climb gradually as it cooks. Alright, we're pushing 230. The decarboxylation process is going well. Of interest may be the fact that the things that give cannabis its unique flavor and aroma are flavonoids and terpenoids, and virtually all of those are vaporized off during the decarboxylation process. So while it's doing this, the smell is pretty strong, but once this is done, when you bake it in the brownies, the taste is very mild, and you almost can't smell it in the brownies or other baked goods. So, alright, as you can see, the bubbling has stopped. For the most part, there's still a little bit coming off here, but it's almost done. Once the bubbling has stopped, it is fully decarboxylated, and at that point I'll turn the heat off and let it cool for a while. Alright, it's been close to an hour, and as you can see, it's pretty much completely stopped bubbling, which means that it's done. So I'm going to turn the heat off and let it cool for probably half an hour or so before I mix in the ingredients. Cannabis oil has cooled off, and I'm going to add the water and the eggs. And pre-mix them. before I add the powder. And the reason that you powder the hash or the bud that you're going to use for these recipes is to get good, even distribution, and you won't have any particles. If you're using bud, you can end up with little pieces of stem in your brownies, which are just no fun at all, can I tell you? And they're not big, but you know. So there's the oil and eggs and water mixed up. And here's the brownie mix. Alright, the batter's mixed up, and I like to add some chocolate chips or butterscotch chips or whatever. In this case I'm using classic white chocolate chips. Get those mixed in real quick. Next step is to butter the pan that you're going to put them in. I like to use a piece of folded up paper towel for spreading the butter on the bottom of the pan. You get good even coverage. I like it that way. It's about as ready as it needs to be. It's pretty simple to spread it out, make it relatively uniform in height, and you'll end up with good even brownies. That's about ready to go in the oven. Alright, when I put it in the oven, I like to take a sheet of foil and just put it kind of loosely over the pan. And when you do that, you need to add probably an extra 10 minutes or so, or an extra, I don't know, 25 to 30% to the time that it will be baking. And about halfway through, you're going to want to pull that foil off, which I will show when I do. About half to 3/4 of the way through the cooking cycle, you want to take the foil off and then let it, finish. Alright, it's time for them to come out. I say them, but right now it's a sheet of brownie. Ooh, it looks good. So I'll set it on this tile to cool for a while, and then we'll cut it up. Alright. Alright, well, part of making good cannabis or medicated foods is to know the size, or more particularly the number of final products that you're going to have, so you can determine the dosage. And determining the dosage is a little bit tricky. It's kind of a trial and error thing to some degree, but you can approximate it pretty well. If you have a good quality scale, you weigh out some material and smoke it. I would start with 5/100ths of a gram, and basically you weigh out that amount of material and you smoke the whole thing. 5/100ths of a gram is just usually a couple of hits, not much. And then you wait and see what the impact is. And once you figure out the weight smoked that will provide you with the level of medication that you need, then you double that amount weighed out, turn it into powder, and calculate it out so that basically twice the weight that it takes to get the relief you need by smoking it needs to be in each individual dose that you bake or that you prepare in other ways, and we'll cover other ways in another video.
case of brownies, I like to, I found that for my pan and everything that I can do a 4x7 pattern, giving me 28 brownies. And so to get, say, in this set of brownies, I have brownies. So there's 14 grams in this entire thing. So that's a half a gram per brownie. And that, it took me some experimentation and some trial and error to reach that conclusion for this particular batch of hash, if you will. Okay, well, it looks like I didn't cut it real accurately, and I'm going to end up with 32 instead of 28, but oh well. Better to start at the low end of the scale than to put a whole bunch of cannabis in and get too much. Anyway, there's the final product. One of these should eliminate all my pain. So, bon appetit. Alright, let's talk briefly about some of the different methods of administration of cannabis as a medicine. The most common way is inhaling smoke. Probably the best way to use cannabis is as a vapor. Vaporizers are expensive and are still unfortunately illegal, considered drug paraphernalia, and difficult to obtain in a lot of places. But if you can obtain a vaporizer, that is the best way to use cannabis, because when you inhale cannabis, whether it's smoke or vapor, you're going to feel your initial effects within 15 to 30 seconds. So within 15 to 30 seconds, you're going to start experiencing relief from your symptoms. And within 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to reach the peak effect. In other words, you're going to have the full effect within 15 to 20 minutes. And the duration of the medication, depending on the amount and the strength of the medication that you use, is typically going to be 2 to 6 hours. If you ingest it, if you eat it as food or as a tincture or in capsule form, it's going to take 75 to 120 minutes, typically 90 minutes, before you're going to feel the initial effect. And it will come on fairly rapidly at that point. But it takes 2 to 3 hours before it reaches the peak effect. And once you have the initial effect, you're looking at 6 to 10 hours of being under the influence of cannabis. And if you're taking a large dose, which is going to give you the 10 hours, it could put you to sleep or make it unsafe to use heavy equipment or other processes that require rapid reaction time and good judgment and clear head. The advantages of inhaling are the initial effect is quick, and when you inhale it, you know within 15 to 20 minutes whether or not you're going to need more or whether or not you've gotten too much, which is very difficult to do if you're smoking. It's hard to inhale too much because the process just naturally slows itself down, and you know fairly quickly. When you ingest it, it's 90 minutes typically before you know if you've had enough or too much. And so titration, or the self-controlling your dose, is very difficult. Once you've eaten it, you're going to get the full dose, whether it's what you need or not. If it's not enough, then you have to take another dose and wait another 90 minutes before you get the full effect. You're going to be under the influence for 6 hours minimum when you eat it. So whereas if you smoke a small amount or vaporize a small amount, the effect can only last maybe 2 or 3 hours. If you're in a lot of pain or you're very physically active, the duration will be a lot slower. Your body will metabolize it more rapidly. The advantages of ingesting it: once you have the correct dosage in your ingestion item, in your food or your tincture or your capsule, it's going to take a while to kick in, but once it does, you have a long-term effect. So if you were leaving for work in the morning and didn't want to have to take anything with you or smoke while you were at work, you could eat a brownie before you left. It's going to be 90 minutes before it kicks in, so you'll be at work before it kicks in, not driving. And then you have, 6 to 8 hours where you're going to be pain-free or, symptom-free from whatever medical issue you're dealing with. So that's the big advantage of ingesting it. It's also a lot easier to carry food or tincture or capsule without raising negative social responses. Some people still, even with the legality of medical use, still react negatively to people who are smoking cannabis. But if you're eating it, nobody really notices and nobody really knows but you and
unless you tell them. So that's the advantages and disadvantages and the various ways you can use cannabis, or ways you can administer cannabis.